it racist to criticize the Palestinians as the world's most tiresome crybabies with a bogus cause and a plight that's entirely self-inflicted? I bet it is. I wouldn't be surprised if it was against the law in certain European countries, but I'm going to do it anyway because somebody has to. And I realise I'll probably lose a few friends with this video, but that's okay. Friends like that I can do without. All any of us can do is to tell the truth as we see it. I mean, as we actually see it, and not as we think we're supposed to see it. The worst thing you can do is to see the truth and to tell a lie, and I see the Palestinian cause as a lie. A lie designed to exploit Western liberal guilt, like the lie of Islamophobia and the lie of the mythical religion of peace that nobody has ever seen in action. I used to be a lot more critical of Israel, and I used to believe there was a fairly simple two-state solution because I used to believe the Arabs were acting in good faith. I still want to believe that, but the evidence tells me I'd be a fool to believe it. Because I've seen that every concession Israel makes is met with more demands and more excuses not to negotiate. They could have had peace 10 times over if they wanted it, but they don't want peace, they want victory, and they won't be happy till Israel is wiped from the map. A member of Fatah's Central Committee said as much on television recently, but as he said, they keep that to themselves and tell the rest of the world a different story. And as part of that story, the bogus claim for Palestinian statehood is currently passing through the United Nations, and we're all waiting to see what plops out the other end. Not that it really matters, because despite what the Palestinian public relations industry, i.e. the Western media, might tell you, this is not about territory, and it certainly isn't about justice or human rights, because Arab societies don't know the meaning of those words. It's about Jew hatred as mandated by the Quran and as preached in the mosques and taught to the children in Arab countries day in and day out, generation after poisoned generation. The Arabs don't hate Jews because of Israel, they hate Israel because of Jews. The situation in the West Bank and Gaza exists because 45 years ago, several Arab countries attacked Israel unprovoked with overwhelming odds because it was a Jewish state. If it hadn't been a Jewish state, they wouldn't have attacked it. And they attacked with the intention of wiping it from the map and of committing genocide. But they failed because the Jews had a bit more steel in their blood than the Arabs had bargained for. And who could be surprised after what they'd been through, and after seeing how the rest of the world had responded to their plight? Large numbers of Jews could have escaped the Nazis if they'd had somewhere else to go, but other countries wouldn't let them in. The Mufti of Jerusalem at the time was a friend of Hitler's, and, good Muslim that he was, he approved of the final solution and had plans for his own Holocaust in the Middle East once the Nazis had won the war. So who can blame the Israelis today for defending themselves as if they mean it, when they know they're dealing with people they know they can't trust and who they know hate them enough to want to exterminate them as a people? Anybody else in their situation would behave the same way. I know I would, and I wouldn't apologise for it. Israel is surrounded by enemies. Peace is more in their interest than in anyone else's, which is why they keep making concessions. But it's not in the interest of the Palestinian leadership. Peace is the last thing they want. They need to keep the pot boiling. They need to keep their people angry and resentful and hating Jews. Peace would ruin everything because they won't be happy until Israel is wiped from the map and the Jews have been driven into the sea. If they really believe that's going to happen, they're insane. And if they don't really believe it, they're even more insane, wouldn't you say? And all you good-hearted Western liberals who keep banging the drum for the poor Palestinians, I sympathise with you because you're doing it for the right reason. But you're being used and exploited, just as the people in the West Bank and Gaza are being exploited by people who have no intention of negotiating peace because they're driven primarily by crude, irrational religious hatred. When you protest for Palestine, you know you'll be in the company of people calling for Jews to be gassed. Do you think that's an accident? You're dealing with something here beyond politics and beyond reason, something truly ugly that drives a spike through all your cosy left-right assumptions, and your naivety is helping to stoke it like bellows to a fire. The world needs to stop pretending that Palestine is about justice and human rights and have the moral courage to call this thing what it is, to put a stop to this charade, this endless dance around a non-existent negotiating table. We need to do the Arabs a huge favour and tell them the truth they so badly need to hear, that their hatred is the cause of their misery. They become prisoners of it. It has come to define their very identity, and until they can find a way to remove this ugly stain from from their hearts. They'll always be chained to it, and they and their children will never be free, Arab Spring or no Arab Spring. Peace. How many wasted generations of hate do you think it'll take? The Islamophobia industry is quick to whine and complain at every opportunity, as everybody knows. And lately they've been whining and complaining about what they call negative coverage of Islam in the British media, by which they mean truthful coverage, although in truth we don't get nearly enough of that. For example, when it was revealed recently that there's been a large increase in so-called honour violence, where Muslim women are brutalised and murdered by members of their own family, nowhere in the BBC report did it mention the one crucial ingredient, the religion of peace. This salient piece of information was carefully airbrushed out, as if to imply that this is a British phenomenon, as if society as a whole is to blame. Similarly, we're always hearing about organised gangs of Muslim men exploiting and raping underage girls. Yet the media never refer to these men by the religion whose misogynistic values have shaped their view of women, preferring instead to label them Asians, which is a gross slander on Hindus and Sikhs who don't engage in this kind of behaviour, yet who are tarred with the same brush by cowardly and dishonest journalists afraid to offend the whining, oversensitive professional victims of Islam. People often say, well, the bad things about Islam are cultural, they're not religious. Really? What happens in Saudi Arabia isn't culture, it's pure religion, it's pure Islam, and it's pure insanity. We're talking about a country run with an iron fist by a handful of brutal, conservative, religious clerics. A country where they execute people for witchcraft, where they execute gay people and treat women as a subhuman species, and where gangs of fanatical, scripture-sodden ignoramuses are allowed to roam the streets enforcing Sharia with medieval rigour. The religion is the problem, not the culture. The problem with Iran is the religion, not the culture. Iranians are not Arabs, but they've been conquered by an alien Arab religion, and now their country's entire focus is on an Arab situation, Palestine, not an Iranian one. This is because the religious fanatics who control Iran, against the wishes of its people, are insane. Their minds are so pickled by their barbaric religion, and they're so obsessed with killing Jews, they're determined to force a nuclear showdown. They're driven by powerful apocalyptic religious delusions which they intend to act upon the first chance they get. They're of the same mentality as the religious fanatics who controlled Europe hundreds of years ago. And if those people had had nuclear weapons, none of us would be here now. Many of the Muslims here in Britain, including the gangs of child rapists, all of them, come from Pakistan, where the culture is shaped by the religion and blasphemy is a capital offence. It's what the religion demands and the culture does what it's told, otherwise the religion will mobilise a mob of illiterate savages to riot in the streets, and scores, if not hundreds of people, are likely to be killed. The religion is the problem, not the culture. The culture isn't great by any means, but without the religion it would be a damn sight better. And we in Britain are busy importing that religion wholesale into our society, where it's about as welcome as the Norman invasion, despite all the platitudes and lies we hear from politicians about tolerance and respect and community cohesion, because people have learned, as they've learned everywhere in the West, that this is far more than just a religion. It's an invasive, political, supremacist ideology that exploits religious freedom and cultural guilt to impose itself with constant demands for special treatment, always backed by the implicit threat of conflict and violence. In other words, through cultural terrorism. So whether it's prayer rooms crowbarred into the workplace where they don't belong, Muslims allowed to pray in the streets and block traffic, medical staff allowed to ignore hygiene rules, the police turning a blind eye to genital mutilation, universities letting jihadists recruit on campus, Sharia courts dehumanising women, or the imposition of halal-only food on the entire population without their knowledge or consent, society, it seems, must always bow to the unreasonable demands of Islam, and anyone who dares to object is either vilified as a racist or openly threatened with violence. This is what the media should be saying about Islam if journalists had the guts to do their job and tell the truth, because it is the truth and everybody knows it's the truth. And you can call me a racist for saying so if you want to, and a hate monger and a bigot and all the rest of it. Go through the card, be my guest. But when you finally run out of names, it will still be the truth. Sorry about that. Thanks to our moral cowardice, we now have hundreds of unregulated madrasas in Britain teaching tens of thousands of children to despise the culture they live in. That bodes well for the future of community cohesion, doesn't it? A madrasa, in case you didn't know, is an Islamic school. In other words, it's the kind of place where you're likely to come out even more ignorant than when you went in. And just last month we had a good example of the kind of mentality these places encourage when 3 Muslim men were convicted of stirring up hatred by passing out leaflets calling for gay people to be executed. They pleaded guilty by all accounts, but to my mind it would have been more accurate and more honest if they'd pleaded insanity. One of them said he did it because he wants to improve society. Well, there's a simple way for him to do that. Emigrate and take all his bigoted, fuzzy-faced friends with him. The prosecution argued that the leaflets were not educational, when in fact they were extremely educational, in that they plainly stated what Islam actually teaches and not what its mealy-mouthed apologists would like to pretend it teaches. Islam does call for the death penalty for homosexuality. It's a fact. And in countries where it's allowed to call the shots, they enthusiastically carry it out. Thanks to unwanted mass Islamic immigration, there are parts of Europe today where if you make it known that you're gay, or Jewish for that matter, you are virtually asking to be physically attacked. It's an indisputable fact that the more Muslims there are in a society, not Asians, Muslims, the less safe it's likely to be for gay people, or Jews, or women, or anyone attempting to exercise their fundamental right to freedom of speech. So where exactly is all the positive coverage of this wretched religion supposed to come from? A religion that routinely responds to the slightest criticism by feigning a ludicrous knee-jerk sensitivity, when its own scripture is a handbook of insensitivity, brutality, and social division. Slay the infidel wherever you find him. Execute gay people, murder apostates, subjugate women, wipe out the Jews. Such an ideology has no claim on sensitivity, and the opinions of those who push it should be given less consideration than other people's, not more. Peace.